Welcome to the Larry Rinker Golf Podcast, your place for tour-proven conversations, world-class instruction, and real results. My guest today is a graduate of the University of Houston and a Hall of Fame teacher. He was just recently inducted into the PGA Hall of Fame. He's worked with many PGA Tour and LPGA Tour champions, a man that needs no introduction. From the Biltmore Hotel in Coral Gables, Florida, please welcome my friend Jim McLean to the show. How you doing, Jim?
I'm doing just fine, Larry. It's really nice to be with you, and I'm really proud of you. There's all the success you're having with the podcast, and of course, we see each other from time to time. I've been visited you at your facilities, so it's great to spend this time with you.
Well, thanks, Jim. You and I go back a long way, back to the Westchester days. So,
And your family. I knew your dad.
yeah,
I've worked a little bit with your family, your brother and sister. So yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, hey, it's a small world, the golf world, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it really is.
So, you have a fairly new book that came out last year on the University of Houston, The Houston Dynasty. You guys, what, 17 NCAA championships under Dave Williams?
Yeah, Dave Williams has won the most NCAAs. Actually, that book is going to come out next year, but they
Oh,
did a pre-order that just came out this past week, Larry. But we when we get together like you guys do at Florida, some of the I think all guys that went play at any golf school, your buddies, you have a lot of stories that happen. Well, at the University of Houston, when I came there, we lived on in a dorm room with 40 other players. I mean, 39 other players. So it was tremendously competitive, or players from all over everywhere, and we're playing for 5 spots. So it was super competitive. But you can imagine when you have that many 18, 19, 20-year-olds in a dorm, the amount of things that happened in that first year. And then we continued with really big teams, and a lot of qualifyings, and then a lot of things happening as at college tournaments and all the. In my era, I played a lot with Lanny Watkins and Tom and Kite and Ben Crenshaw and Howard Twitty. So a lot of people might not even know those names anymore, but they were, world class players. And I lived with Bruce Litsky and Bill Rogers and John Mahaffey, that won major championships. So yeah, I got to see what great golf was and what it took, and all the different types of swings.
don't you think it's important for all of us to be able to play with great players? Don't we learn so much from doing that?
Yeah, I really think that's been a blessing for both you and I. You've played with more than I have, but I did, play with really great player teachers like Jackie Burke and Ken Venturi and Claude Harmon and Johnny
Right.
Revolta. So I had those guys that were major champions, and they taught, which obviously doesn't happen anymore. But just being able to, the other guys from my era and your era, where we're watching what they're doing and picking up, how they're approaching the game of golf and looking at a much bigger picture than just the golf swing.
Right. Yeah, well, I think anybody that ever got recruited by Dave Williams remembers the typewritten letters that had many mistakes in them. So,
I wish I would have kept more. I have some. I put some of those in the book. I did talk a little bit about before my time and after my time, but we all got those typewritten letters. I know you got them probably, and yeah, he was quite a classic guy, but he was an unbelievable recruiter. I mean, he was all over the United States and outside of the United States to try and entice people to come to Houston.
no, he was. I remember he said to me when I was being recruited, he said, "Why don't you come play with the number one college player, Keith Fergus,
Yeah.
who Keith, well, I think came in second to Phil Hancock that my freshman year. I got to play with the number one guy, Phil Hancock, but Keith Fergus went on to have a great career on the PGA Tour. But the Houston teams were, I mean, shoot, You and I could go on and on. Have you won more than Oklahoma State? Do you know who second is? I was going to look it up and didn't get around to
I,
it.
I
Did you
think
know?
Oklahoma State is. My youngest son went to Oklahoma State, and I know the coaches there pretty well. And then we would talk a little bit, about that rivalry, who won the most. So I always had a little one up on them.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's funny. I was talking with the caddies the other day at the Ritz-Carlton Golf Club in Orlando, and we were talking about, and they only remember, the last 15 years, and they're like, "Oh, Alabama and Georgia and this and that." And I'm like, "Well, I think Florida's won more national golf championships than Georgia and Alabama." And we looked it up, and we had four, and I think they had three. But I mean, you're 17, and Wake Forest had some great teams
Yeah.
there too. I mean, it was pretty amazing how much talent there was.
Well,
And
Larry, when I played at Houston, Florida had Andy North, Andy Bean, Gary Koch, Mike Killian, a pretty great group of guys. We were very competitive, and Andy North's always been a great friend of mine forever, and he's still doing ESPN. But when one of the things Andy would do is, and he did this to me to irritate me, he could be very irritating, as I'm sure you know. But I would be putting and he'd sneak up behind me and slap one of my golf balls, like 30 yards off the green. Just to be I won't say it, but just to aggravate me. But he
yeah,
just loved doing that.
yeah.
Yeah.
I remember I qualified for the 1980 U.S. Open at Baltusrol. It was my first major, and it was really only my second tour event. I wasn't on tour yet. And Andy North was on the putting green. He said, "This is the easiest tournament to make the cut in." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm thinking, this is the hardest tournament in golf. He's like, "Yeah, most guys give up after 9 holes." So he said, but that was some pretty good wisdom from a guy that won that tournament twice.
That's right. And, I think the chance to play in a US Open, which I'm happy to say I was able to play in a couple of those, it really gives you a really appreciation of what it takes to win the US Open and how brutally hard these golf courses are, and to shoot those scores we've seen all through the years, but just at a different level. Uh, from me, you were a little closer, but still, it's just to win a U.S. Open.
Yeah.
Hard to explain to people how hard they set the golf courses up.
Now they want it to be the toughest test in golf. You've played in a U.S. Junior, a U.S. Amateur, a U.S. Open, a U.S. Senior Open, and made the cut in the Masters. You won three college events. How close did you come to making it as a player?
Well, I had some deficiencies. I came very close. We played 8 rounds in 1974, 4 rounds up at Silverado, and then 4 rounds down in Palm Springs. And I missed by three, which over 8 rounds is, you could really think of
Right
about
there.
15 screw ups that you easily could have done. Litsky missed by one at the same time, and Bill Rogers made it the same that one. But there's been a lot of tragedies at qualifiers, and if you miss, there's another year to go, and uh, I got burned out pretty much right then, and I, I played a lot of golf like you did, but it takes a special person to keep going and continue to climb that ladder. Larry, I had a lot of. I was a gifted ball striker, and pretty good putter, but I was made some, the mental stuff and the ability to relax and not take golf home with me. I was the opposite. Bruce Litsky was one of my great friends, and he was like the greatest. Whether he shot
Yeah.
62 or 80, he would be the same person at night, and he just didn't take golf home with him. And I think that ability to sleep well at night, nobody ever talks about that. But the great players I've worked with, like a Tom Kite, for example, he could sleep 10 or 11 hours on the lead. And I would be, flipping over in bed all night. And so there's a lot to being a tour player.
Yeah.
And you did it for, how many years? 15 or more?
Yeah, more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
more. Yeah,
525 starts.
isn't
So
that something? Yeah, that's
pretty
really
big deal.
takes a lot to be able to hang in there and continue to play the tour, because you got that new crop of guys coming every year, and the other players that just barely, from around the world. And people don't realize that the PGA Tour, I think they do more now, but they're they have the best players from Germany, the best players from Spain, the best player from England, Ireland, Scotland, Korea,
World
Czech.
Tour.
So, yeah, it's a world tour. And so when we were talking about the top 125 to stay on the tour, now it's going down to 100, but it's not the top 125 guys from America, and it never has been. So
No.
it's a real amazing thing to be able to stay out there like you did, and play all those years, do all the traveling, and also play well enough to stay out on the PGA Tour.
Well, I was fortunate. Just whenever my back was against the wall, I seemed to come through and make that putt or hit that 4 iron on the green on the last hole, two putt for par to make it. So I just was fortunate to
So
continue
I've
to
got
do
I've got
what
a
I.
question for you. I've got a question for you. Why do you think, and I have a number of guys I teach the same thing, when they get their back to the wall, they come through. But why couldn't you do that more often when your back wasn't against the wall? What do you think it was on the mental part for you and other players, that when they, got to make a par putt or they got to shoot a good last round, they can do it?
I can tell you a few instances of things that happened. I remember the tour school fall of 1980. Freddie Couples and Marco Mira make it Port Washington in Fresno, California. I shot 78 the first round with 39 putts and missed by one shot. So my self-talk said at the end of that tournament, this is not a pipe dream. I can make the tour. I can qualify for the tour. And then the next time I made it. Now, I remember the last three holes, I birdied the 15th hole at the Palm Course at Disney World where the finals were. And I was like, don't mess it up. I had it. And I remember I bogeyed 17 and 18 and made it by one. I remember another time playing TPC, the stadium course, at the tour school. I had been on tour and finished 132 on the money list in 82, so I had to go back. And I remember just giving it to God. And I just I had this peace. But then I got to 16, 17, and 18, and it was a roller coaster. It's just really very nerve-wracking finishing that off.
Yeah.
So it's interesting where you go to mentally to get to that place where time almost stands still. I remember a second stage one time where for one time, I felt like I actually got on the other side of fear. It was like I knew I needed to make one more birdie coming in. I had a par five, and I just had a piece, and I got to that par five, got it around the green and two, got it up and down, and ended up making it. But
Yeah.
I don't know. Sometimes you just get angry. I think the reason why we work hard and we work our butts off is we feel like we deserve it. I think that helps us mentally at times. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to your intention. Do you see yourself as a winner on tour? Do you see yourself qualifying for the tour and making it and being a tour player? And I think you've just got to hold on to that dream and just really believe that you can do it. And you don't always do it in golf. There's so many variables and things that can happen, but I just was
Well,
very fortunate, with being able to get the job done and have a pretty long career.
I think it's very interesting that you have a an insight that way. Sorry, a phone call's coming through, but that you felt when you missed, like, hey, I barely missed, and I can do it. Are we still on there, Larry?
We are
Still okay?
still on. We are
Sorry if
still.
this a phone call is beeping on me, but
It's
but yeah,
okay.
when I missed, I felt like, hey, I can't believe I couldn't make it. I can't believe I missed it. This must not be what I should be doing. It's kind of the opposite attitude. And that attitude is of course so critically important in everything. I definitely think it's helped me tremendously as a teacher
Yeah.
because I know how critical the mental part of the game is and the managing your life and the other little components that go into being a good player.
I had something happen a couple weeks ago. You've had it a lot, but I had four players I'd worked with that were going to second stage. And one of them I had just given an hour and a half putting lesson to. Another one I've been working with about 13 months. And the one that I'd been working with a long time, he, I thought mentally he was in a great place because he said, if I don't make it, I know I'm going to play golf next year. I think sometimes guys go into it and go, okay, if I don't make it this time, I'm done. I'm going to do something else. That puts a lot of pressure on you. And I was playing the mini tours here in Orlando and I was enjoying life. I was making enough money to pay my bills. I was doing something I loved. And hey, if I didn't make the tour school, I could come back here, right back to Orlando and keep doing what I was doing and try and get better for the next time. So I think sometimes we put a lot of pressure on us. It's do or die. And I think the guys that have a better attitude about that, like, hey, this is my job, and whatever happens, I'm going to keep plowing ahead, a better attitude. Although this player shot 77 the first round and really got himself behind the eight ball. And in a tour school, you're seven shots out after one day. Very few can recover from that. It's like almost a knockout, even though he finished, but pretty tough. One of the guys that I've worked with some, I worked with him when he was like 11 and 12, Frank Kennedy. I think you've worked some with him.
Yeah, I worked with Frank a lot.
And
Hmm.
so I was surprised. He shot a lot. He wasn't as competitive as I thought he was going to be. But hey, golf's a journey. And just because you had a bad experience or you played bad, you got to be able to shake it off. It doesn't work well in your marriage when you do something wrong. You say, honey, just another double bogey. Let's go play the next hole. They want to talk about it. But in golf, you have to really be able to, you can get mad, you can let it all out, but you've got to be present for that next shot. And that's just part of the maturing process, Jim, of really becoming a professional player, knowing how to manage yourself out on the golf course.
Well, those are wise words. I had an interesting story. I think you'll be interested in this because it's one of these kind of nightmare stories that happen. I'm working with a guy, James Nicholas, who is exempt on the Corn Ferry Tour, but he went back to stage two to try and get your tour card, which will give 5 spots away at the finals. But he had to start at stage two. And on the last day, he was one shot out going into the last round, and he was playing in really bad weather through the 13th hole. He was four under and way inside. And they closed down the day, and then the weather didn't stop, for a while. And then they just shut down the whole thing. So they just made it a 3 round tournament. So the guys that were inside in 3 rounds all got in, and anybody that was outside and playing well didn't get in. But those are the kind of nightmare things that we all know have happened at tour schools, and it's just like for somebody that had no status, it's a devastating blow, really, and where
Yeah.
now you've got to, you pretty much have no status to play anywhere.
Yeah, and I could tell stories like that. I know stories just like that one where a guy played a good round and they ended up washing the whole thing out. He shot six. It was Steve Hart. Steve Hart
Yeah,
from
I know Steve Hart.
Steve Hart shot 69 the fifth round of tour school. It was like 82 or 83 and really tough weather, rain and everything. They washed it out. He went out the next day and shot, I don't know, a high number, but that was devastating to him.
Yeah,
So it's crazy. I mean, Joe Daly hits a putt that goes down into the bottom of the cup, hits the bottom of the cup, and comes out. I mean, we've seen some crazy stuff. Jim, you once told me you had a lesson with someone that kind of stopped your progress as a player and
yeah.
messed you up. We've all worked on the wrong things for us in the past. When you look back on that, What did you learn from that experience?
Yeah, I learned a lot from that. It wasn't that was a bad teacher. It was a very intellectual teacher, and I'm not going to mention any names, but um, I was looking for something other than other things in my life. So I think I see that with a lot of pros that I've tour players and other pros that I've worked with. We kind of all want it to be our golf swing. We don't want it to be the mental part for sure. And we don't want them to be, the management part so much. Everybody kind of wants to go to the golf swing first, which is what I did. And I didn't really need to do that. I mean, that wasn't the problem when I look back. So then I started working on a method, and it was an interesting method to me. It hadn't made a lot of sense. And I really went down this rabbit hole, and I gradually got a little bit worse. And once you work on the wrong things for about 6 months, it's really hard to come back to kind of your old swing, let's say, or the way you used to play. And I think it's such a great lesson that you've got to be careful about what you're working on and make sure that you're doing the right thing. I guess we can't be sure all the time, but
No, no,
uh, it's just a dangerous thing if that's the best part of your game, let's say, and then
right.
you're going to go to that part of your game to get better. And I definitely made that mistake.
Well, I watched Grant Waite work with Victor Hovland after the Players' Championship this year for about 30 minutes. And Victor had missed four cuts in a row, and he was not playing well. And Victor had his phone out and was showing videos of where he really liked his swing. And Grant's filming him, and he says, "Here, it's the same." And Victor goes, "But it feels totally different."
Yeah.
So no wonder we can't find our way back after we've worked on something for six
Well,
months.
Victor's such an interesting guy. I'm Norwegian, so I always watch him, and I've talked to him very briefly. But I mean, he says the most negative things about himself, and you would
Yeah.
think, they're not a great. He's been number two in the world. You wouldn't think that he would say, I can't hit a shot. My swing sucks. I can't chip. I can't pitch. On a little list of things that he can't do, and then he might win the next week. It's just, but
And then
that's
he
that.
wins. He
Yeah,
wins the Valspar after that.
yeah. That's a rare person that can do that. I would not recommend that.
No, no, I would want to have a little better positive outlook on that. So, Jim, how did you get into teaching?
Well, I missed the two tour schools, and I was, like I told you, super frustrated. I just was really in a bad place mentally, and I flew to Houston and met with Jackie Burke in Texas, and he said, "Why don't you think about going up to teach in New York? Because you work, 6 months and 6 months off. You can still go back and play in the winter and see if you want to keep going." And a lot of times he told me, if you go teach, you'll learn a lot more about your own game, and you'll learn more about the game. And I went to New York, and I never really planned on being a teacher, but I really liked it. I enjoyed it. We had 45 holes of golf, and we had the PGA Tour event, which I know you played in, and your brother. And
At Westchester Country
yeah,
Club.
Westchester, great place, huge range, huge junior program. And I didn't have to get up and worry about what I was going to shoot the next day for the first time in about, you know, 15 years. And it was just a big relief for me. And then I really got into teaching. I was very interested in the next the winters. I would go see teachers around the country. I was read a ton of things. I, my dad's an engineer, so I probably have a little bit of that in me. So I love the teaching part, and it's a rare thing I think for you to be on the tour that long and then teach. Uh, because I think a tour player kind of looks down. That's really, I'm not going to do teaching. Certainly not going to go to a club and teach, but some people do it, and you have to have I think it's just a real interest in learning and curiosity. which I think is a big thing in any business. So you have a real big curiosity, and that you can go in depth. And for me, it was just something, hey, I want to be really good at this. I wanted to be I planned on being a great player. And then I said, well, I'm going to try and be great at this. So it was just another direction to go in.
Well, there was a gentleman that was hanging out around Westchester Country Club named Light Horse Harry Cooper.
Yeah, I taught with him. I knew Harry very well. Yeah, people wouldn't know who he is. He won 31 times on the PGA Tour, and he was called Light Horse Harry Cooper. And I'm really pleased that did you get to spend a little time with him?
I saw him, and it was sad really at the end. I think I saw him. He was probably almost 90 years old when I got to spend a little time with him, but I think he passed away a pauper. I mean, I just think, those were the times, guys didn't make that much money playing the tour back then. So, but what a gentleman and what a great guy to just talk to. I've always enjoyed that. You and our friend Bob Toski, we
Yeah.
spent a lot of time with him. He's 99 now, still alive. So I I really enjoy talking with the older guys because they're wise. They've been around. They've
So,
seen it, and I'm sure you learned a lot from him,
yeah.
and you got to teach with him. So
Yeah,
wow.
I got to teach with him for 4 years and took lessons from him, watched him teach. He, to be able to talk to somebody that played with Bobby Jones a lot, played with Ben Hogan a lot, and all the others, Byron Nelson, et cetera, through that really interesting time on pro golf. And those guys, Larry played 36 holes a day, a lot. So the something we don't do much anymore. I mean, I used to play 36 more in the old days. It's really something almost it's not done very much but when you're playing like 36 a day all the time, you can really, you know, be, really improve as a player. I try to get the kids I work with to play more than 18 at least, but it's pretty interesting, when you were able to talk to those old timers of how much golf they played, and it was an absolute cutthroat deal because just about 15 or 20 guys were able to make a living, playing for money, and they were probably way underrated. Going back to Merritt and Byron Nelson and Hogan.
Right.
Well, Hogan's not underrated, but
No.
Gary Cooper and some of those people are phenomenal players. He was still could really hit the golf ball. And he was probably in his early 80s when I was working with him.
How did you get to Sleepy Hollow?
Well, it was a little bit of a path. My first head pro job was at Sunningdale in Scarsdale. Beautiful, great, great club. And then I went to Quaker Ridge, which is one of the great clubs in America.
Yeah.
Right next to Wingfoot, designed by Tillinghast, both of those courses. And then I did Quaker Ridge and Tamara's down in Rancho Mirage, California. I split those jobs, and then Sleepy Hollow uh, was interested, and I was able to move to Sleepy, which was, we had a really great range. I didn't have that at Quaker Ridge, although I taught a ton. But at Sleepy, I had a junior program again. We had a senior tour event all 6 years I was there. Um, it was a great place for me to go to. I had a home right next door to Sleepy. It's now ranked in the top 100 courses. It was kind of not ranked back then as at that high, but it's just a spectacular golf course. And the clubhouse, have you been there to Sleepy?
I have there. I've been in the trailer at the end of the range with you.
I forgot about that. That's right. Well, the club, the drive into Sleepy Hollow is one of the great drives to any
Yeah.
club in the world. We used to have a long, windy drive up to the old Vanderbilt house up on the hill. Development, I mean, estate. I don't mean a home. It was 100 rooms, and it had the
Wow.
bowling alley inside, and we had skeet shooting. We had kept 50 horses, 18 miles of horseback trails, 27 holes of golf. It was a spectacular place to be at. I loved it.
But Doral kind of changed everything for you, didn't it?
Yes, it did. Yes, it did.
So
Well,
Jimmy Ballard was there, and then
yeah,
you had that door opened.
that door opened. The Caskel family, they were members up at Quaker Ridge, so they knew me, and I had this really great place that I loved to sleep in, and Howard wanted me to come down and take over after Jimmy Ballard, and that's a big move to make when I was really pretty much on easy street with a tremendous job up there, and I gave it a lot of thought. I talked to some smart people, and it was a chance to run my own business. Um, I had two boys younger boys at that time, and I knew I could. At that time, we didn't have hardly any business in the summer. People didn't stay down here in the summertime, so it was 4 months off in the summer when my boys were out of school. So I was able to do a lot more things compared to when I was in New York. I would teach till 9 o'clock a lot of nights because that's like we were talking earlier. That's when I could teach the outside players. I mean,
Right,
because you're not teaching the outside players during the middle of the day. And I had a lot of really good players in New York that I was working with. And then, the tour players too. So I had a lot of tour players who were coming up there like you. Um, so that move down was a big one. But yeah, that put me in the major leagues in teaching, where I was at a big resort, could teach anybody. And we had the PGA Tour event,
right,
which was great. Uh, it gave me access and my teachers access to the PGA Tour to videotape. We could bring the tripods out there
yeah,
and videotape everybody. And of course, Tiger Woods and Raymond Floyd and Jack Nicklaus and all the great players. Everybody played at Doral in those days.
right.
It was
That's
kind of,
foreign players used to say the tour started at Doral.
yeah,
Greg Norman,
Seve played every
Price.
year. Nikki Price, absolutely. So Faldo, all those players, Bernard Langer, Sandy Lyle, those guys all came over. I mean, it was an international field. Um, so I mean, it was really special, and it was a big party that week too. It was just an amazingly huge tournament,
Right.
and we had a lot of fun. How many did you play in? Do you know?
I'm gonna guess 14 or 15.
Yeah.
Uh, I had one that I was in the final group on Saturday. I know what year it was because I got married that year. So it was 1987. And then I tripled the 18th hole on Saturday. So I was in about 12th place going to Sunday. If I part, I'm in the final group. And I get food poisoning that night and never made it to the first tee on Sunday.
Oh no, you didn't even
And that
play?
no, and that was when that was $1 million tournament purse, and that
Yeah.
was one of the first ones. Vegas was 1 million then, but Doral, I mean, you had all this video. I mean, one of your mentors, Carl Welty, was a big video guy. Used to look at video a lot. I mean, you guys had to sit around with your teachers and study those and say, "Hey, look at this guy and that guy, and what are they doing?" and why does this swing work? It's funny today. You look at these people. It seems like Robert Brock. I see all this stuff. Everybody's like trying to copy his swing now, and yet Scotty Scheffler breaks all the rules, and all these guys. I mean, in your day, Craig Stadler, Litsky. Do they look like
Mhm.
the perfect swing? I mean, Grant Wade had a great swing. You could almost say that was pretty
Yeah.
textbook if
Yeah.
you consider that textbook. Tom Purzer was probably considered one of the best swings. Adam Scott, uh, but yet even today we still have players that do things in their swing that somebody
Oh
can.
yeah.
Oh, I don't
Absolutely.
like that or that, but it works and it works for them, and they can repeat it. That's really the most important thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I think a lot of the prettiest swings I've seen have been club pros that shoot 77 in tournaments. And that's true. And you watch the tour and all these different swings, even right now, that defy logic almost. We could list them off, but they have different tempos, different positions at the top, different takeaways. Um, but where all these great players are great is when they transition and get that club in the slot, or you would say even from waist high to waist high, you can't get away from the geometry of the physics, but how
No.
you take the club away. I remember when we talked about Claude Harmon just a moment there, I mentioned him, but Mr. Harmon was really big on that. And he said he would do a little funny thing where he'd take it up. He said, I can loop it around 8 times the top and hit it perfect. And he could do it. But some people just have this hand-eye coordination that's just, off the planet. The visualization techniques they have, the hand-eye coordination, the ability to square that club face up. Obviously, right now, you could say Scotty Scheffler, you could pick a lot of things that he doesn't do anywhere close to technically perfect, but he's so much better than the next best guy on the tour right now. And there's so many fantastic, incredible players, but he's clearly, better. And he's got
Right.
the club way up high and well, we could go through a bunch of things. He's sliding and the feet are going backwards. And there's a lot of things that if that had been taken away from him as a young guy, Randy Smith, you got to give him a lot of credit. He could easily
I,
change that kid's swing when he was little, but he didn't do it. He let him go.
and Jim Furyk's dad's a PGA pro, and he didn't change that either. And look at the
I
career he's had.
I always voted for Mike Furyk as for the teacher of the year in the PGA because I said, what other teacher would have let this unbelievable swing of Jim Furyk keep it and have him be one of the best players in the history of the golf? And I said, I got to give you a lot of credit, Mike. And he just said that he did try to change him some when he was younger, but he couldn't do it well. And he just hit the ball good. And he said, I started just teaching off where the ball went instead of teaching what the swing was doing, which, he was Furyk is standing in right on top of the ball, the hands between his legs at address and taking the club outside and having his hips at about 90 degrees open, which was pretty close to the truth at impact. Uh, you think, wow. And then he's just striping drivers, didn't have the most speed, but just absolutely lasering drivers. Like, I'm sure you played with him.
I have, and it's just amazing. And he's so meticulous running his routine. I mean, he just runs it, and you know, I remember when TrackMans first came out, they said he's the most consistent on TrackMan on his numbers, and TrackMans only cares about what happens at impact. So
Larry, I worked with Bernard Langer some in the early 2000s, and I had a machine that measured path I used all the time. It was called a Golf Tech before TrackMan, but it was good. And I would ask Bernhard to do anything, swing at any angle with any club face, and he'd do it on one swing. And had back then a strong grip, took it a little, had some
right.
moves in there, but he had control of that golf club. And it was, those elite players can do some different things, but I think if you would have taken those things away from them, they never would have been as good. They probably would have been good, but I don't know if they would have been as good, losing the naturalness of their golf swing.
I agree with that. I think it's rare to see a Tiger Woods or a Nick Faldo, people that have really changed their swings a lot and still be able to be successful. I think that's rare. A lot of people they do that and then they're selling insurance now. It's just it's messed them up. Jim, you have so many instructors that have worked under you that have become successful teachers. How do teachers teach teachers?
Well, you mentioned Carl Welty, who was a mentor for me on how to use video and how to set up a lesson. He ran the school at like his school at La Costa, and then he ended up working teaching for me at PGA West for a long time. So we're great friends. Let me turn this thing off. Um, so I got to run a golf school. Let's get right to that. You can't have teachers teaching different things. So I knew that. I'd seen other schools fail, and I needed to get a system for teaching, not a system for swinging, but how to teach the game. And as you know, I love learning about it, but I started running the meetings. So we would all get together at Doral, and then those kind of progressed, and we got more teachers. And we would run Monday morning meetings for 90 minutes. And through the years, I brought good guys in with me right away from the Met area, and then that started to build on itself because these people that were teaching for me, also my assistants in New York, but they got head pro jobs or director of teaching positions. So one thing I never wanted to do, Larry, which I saw a lot of club professionals do, if they had a good guy with them, they'd keep them. They'd try and keep them there. They didn't really help them move on, and they'd keep an assistant for 9 or 10 or 15 years. And I really copied Claude Harmon up in New York at Wingfoot, where he tried to have the guys work for him for 2 or 3 years and go. He said, I want you to go to you know, a better place, good job. And then I really tried to do the same thing. Um, Now I also have had some teachers stay with me a long time, which is great, but they're my top guys and they make a really good living. But some of these young guys then have been able to move on to, some of the top clubs in the country. And I'm talking right now, we have 250 teachers that have worked for me that are at great places. That would go well, like to Daryl Kestner, that worked for me for a few
Yeah.
years at Doral, and Jeff Warren at the Bridge.
Yeah.
And it's everywhere. But
Right.
and one thing that's happened too, Larry, is the director of instruction position is now a big position. Where
Yeah.
for me, when I was teaching a lot at my clubs in New York, I was the director of golf. I was the head
Oh,
pro.
right.
But
Right.
my main thing was teaching. That's how I got those jobs. I said, what I do is I'm going to be playing with the members, teaching the members. I wanted to be like a real pro.
You
I
want to
was
be Claude
definitely,
Harmon.
I didn't, yeah, exactly. Claude played every day. Um, so I didn't want to be in the inside folding the shirts and talking to people in the golf shop. And I know a lot of, I'm not trying to degrade anybody. That's just not what I wanted to do. So the jobs I got in New York were heavy teaching and playing and going down on the first tee, hanging out with them having a talk with them when they teed off on the first tee or something, but not being in the golf shop. And I had a lady, Mary Lopazinski, that worked for me for all the years I was at Quaker Ridge and Sleepy Hollow. And then she went on to run the USGA
Wow.
merchandising. So I had a great person in the shop. And Claude Harmon I can't think of Mickey's last name, but he ran the golf shop and he was great. And Claude could barely step in the shop. And I kind of wanted to be the same thing. Um, and then, of course, coming down here to Doral, I really put a high emphasis on training the teachers to move on. And so we work really hard on the service aspect, the interpersonal skills with people, obviously all the teaching skills, being able to diagnose and how to set up a lesson, how to set up a range. And I'm a huge detail guy. And I think when they go in for an interview, they are pretty far ahead of anybody else going in.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think you also came up with a system how you teach, but you also came up with your 8-step swing.
Yeah.
So you came up with, okay, let's have a system that we use to identify things with each player. And there's variables in those steps. They don't have to be exact like some teachers, but you came up with a system that your teachers could follow. And I totally agree with you. I mean, you can't have one guy teaching this, another guy teaching that. And
No.
you and I both know there's multiple ways to teach the person in front of you. Sometimes it's gray area. You gotta come from something way back in your past. I had this young kid recently who came to me for a lesson, and man, I kind of assessed him and realized what he needed to do, but we're hitting balls, and I'm like, I need to teach this kid how to control the face and the ball. It's like, so what about all these other things? Let's talk about why is the ball going left? Why is the ball going right? And it just made me go into this place where, we have to go with students to help them understand that, don't we?
Yeah, I think when stepping back to the steps, of the position teaching is a lot of teachers say, "Oh, I'm not a position teacher," but if you watch them teach, they really are. And what I'm talking about there is setup. So that's a position. So most every teacher I've ever been to that's any good is really good at teaching setup, which is there's more to it than most people think. And then, how do you start the swing? Um, like not from a dead stop, which a lot of the people come to our schools are, very slow over the ball, tight, no movement in the feet. So yeah, that's kind of and then the first move away. So you could call that a number, step one, or you could say takeaway. And then you could say halfway back, which to me, like your father for sure would teach you kids, the Rinker kids, hey, let's get it halfway back here in good shape. Might be slightly different for what people think, but that would be, you could say that's step two, which we do, or we just say halfway back. And then you say top of the backswing. Okay, that's a position you may, and I think there's a big window there, a big safety zone of
Right,
where,
right.
if all we had to do was take it to the top with a square club face and point it down at the target, parallel to the target line, like Jackie Burke told me, everybody'd be great. But that's just too easy to do. That's anybody could do that if they worked on it for a month. But um, I'd say your transition, I mean, I look at that really close. Your delivery position, impact position, extension position. We could call it a number. We could call it halfway through.
Right,
You can use anything to call it, and then finish position. So
right.
yeah, I use, eight basic, I'd say we're going back to the golf machine. Well, had these same positions, and John Gerstein, who taught Johnny Miller and Mike Reed, I know you played with. He had five positions. I spent a lot of time with Mr. Gerstein out in California. So, I was very interested in how he looked at teaching a golf swing because those guys were such great ball strikers.
Right.
Um, anyway, so I always liked I went to that area, and that's pretty easy for me to teach the teachers that teach for me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a good system, and just look at the success. Look at all the guys you've had and the players you've helped through the years. I mean, I would say for me and what I've learned in teaching is I just have a philosophy that wherever your club is in your backswing, and it maybe doesn't even get to your lead arm parallel to the ground, the backswing, I feel like you should be able to shift your weight into your lead foot and hit a golf ball. So when I see this stuff with the club outside, the hands and the hands and wrist not really setting, I go, okay, how do you go from there and hit the ball? You've got to somehow get this club in a position, your trail arm and hand in a position where you could find the golf ball. And then I think and then that also goes to pivot. I think a lot of people, their pivots are not good. And then I think the transition is the one where we see so many problems where, the average golfer comes over the top of it and slices. So I think those are some areas that are pretty common with everybody, don't you think?
Oh yeah, those are absolute must for us as teaching the game. But I think Larry, you're very positive with what you teach. I think you're also known for your short game work. I think it's so important to be, I think I've tried to be good at everything, but it's also good to be known for something and be really great at teaching one part of the game. I
Right,
think we look at ourselves as total game teachers, but
right.
I've also told our teachers, hey, what if you were the best bunker teacher, or you're the best short game teacher, or you're known for you could help anybody with driving the ball? You got to be um, have a little niche sometimes in this game to stand out.
Yes.
And yeah,
It helps. When I first started teaching in 2001, my first student was Ty Tryon. So I was part of a team that helped a 17-year-old qualify for the tour. I was still world class inside 100 yards, but
Yeah,
I
I know
was
you are.
working on the wrong things in my swing. So I was like, if I can't find the ball, who am I to teach golf swing? So my niche came about because of that. And then I had a good story to tell that my peers would say I had a great short game. I led the tour in putting. So, okay, that's a nice package
Yeah,
to
that's
say
really
in
nice.
this
Yeah.
niche. But, it's just been fun through the years and getting to just like you've done, talk to other people, work with other people. I really love Dr. David Wright and Right Balance. And it's just, getting into the full swing now and just feel like, wow, I'm really a total game teacher. And part of being a total game teacher, I think too, Jim, is this whole mental part of the game, and just helping your players with attitude. And when you've got students getting ready for that exam, that fall classic, the PGA Tour School every fall, now it's game on, boys. It's you might need a little talk with them just to get them to trust themselves when they go play.
Well, the centerpiece of my school is I called it the 25% theory, which is dividing the game into four quadrants: the long game, the short game, the mental game, and the management game. And of course, there's subsets for all of those. But I really try to hammer that into it with our teachers, that you try to learn about the player that you're working with, what area of their game is going to help them become a better player. Uh, Most of the time, you're with a younger player, you're starting from the green backwards, you're building a short game that, as you were mentioning, if you've got a great short game, you can make a lot of mistakes in golf and shoot a good score. And it also greatly helps your mental game, also helps your management game. So that whole pie of
Right.
what makes a good player and being able to be proficient in all of those. I was talking to one of our players today, and I was going through all of the different sports psychologists I've worked with. But I believe that as a teacher, you and I, that we've got to be pretty, pretty dang good at being a mental coach, because
Oh,
a
we
lot of
do.
my instruction, the best I've helped people really at any level, is on the mental part.
Yeah. No, I agree. And then you also need to be part psychologist,
Yeah.
so you can diagnose, okay, I got to give this person a little bit, or this person needs more, or it's like this person's too tight, this person's, too rigid with everything, and this other guy's a free spirit. We got to rein them in. I mean, there's so much about just really understanding who you're trying to help and really just trying to be the best person you can. Jim, how has technology changed your teaching philosophy?
Um, Good question. I love technology. I've always tried to be on the leading edge of bringing everything in, from force plates to TrackMan, and before that, the Golf Tech. So I think it really helps me communicate with my students, because I think everyone likes to see it up on the TV, the actual numbers. I know you can do this. I think anybody that's taught for a while, not anybody, but if you really understand the game, that you can watch somebody hit a golf ball and come really close to every number the TrackMan does, all of them, especially the spin and the path and the club face. It's really not that hard, I guess, but to see the numbers come up there and verify it, it's good for you to verify it too.
Right.
So TrackMan's been fabulous. We use the quads now from Foresight, easy to carry around on the range, and it tells you, exactly how far the ball would have gone with no wind. So
Right.
that's been a really cool thing to just bring right out on the golf course. We do a lot of on-course work. Um, yeah, so I think that technology, and now we've got force plates. I've always felt like I was pretty good at looking at how somebody moves into the ground and out of the ground. But there's, when you see those numbers and the peaks, it's really good. It's
Yeah.
expensive to put all this stuff in, but
Yes.
it, it it's uh it if you can do it, I think it's a plus.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times you don't, you've got to kind of water it down. You can
Oh
look
yeah.
at all the numbers and say this and learn from that, but I find kind of when I first started using video, I didn't have to argue with somebody. I'm not coming over the top of it. Oh, well, look at your
Yep.
video. Oh, wow, I didn't know I was doing that. So it's having video and having technology and having numbers saying, yeah, you still swung left there. You still haven't swung into out yet.
Hmm.
I think it's a big help because I bet you're like me. There's a lot of students you have to get them to exaggerate what they're trying to do more than they'll give themselves permission to do it.
Absolutely correct. The average student that comes to me with a swing problem, I will even have them make a practice swing and see, and I'll make a good practice swing for me. And that's, oh, my practice swing is really good. But when I hit the ball, it's not good. But then I show them their practice swing. I said, boy, there's a lot of bad stuff in this practice swing right here. And you're not hitting a golf ball, so you think it's okay, but they're constantly making a bad move even in the practice swing, and might exaggerate a little bit when they hit the golf ball. But yeah, it's a stunning thing for a lot of people to see themselves on video and to watch. To me, there's two things to look at: what's the body doing, and then what's the club doing. And the
Right,
interesting thing for me, Larry, is you can tell to people about just swinging the club, and that can help all of their body movements. And
right.
then you could talk to them about better body movements, and then this club swings better. So they both have this influence on the other. And I'm always looking to see which one do I need to focus on more? Does this person
Right.
need more lag or more release? And all of the little things, the pieces that we have to do as a detective to get this person to do the right thing for themselves. What can they do to make their swing better?
Yeah, I learned from Bob Toski. We look at what the ball did first, then what happened at impact to make that ball do that, and then what did my body do and club and arms and hands do to deliver that club to the ball that way. And talk to Hank Haney. His mentor was John Jacobs. Taught the same way. John
Yep.
Jacobs taught with Toski and the Golf Digest schools in the '70s. Your mentors have taught you that. I always get a kick out of people. I say, "What happened on that swing?" Well, I think I came up or did this. I'm like, "A ball, dude. It went dead right." It's
Yeah.
like you're
You
you're
gotta.
thinking about I'm thinking that ball's in the woods if we're on the golf course, okay? Let's talk about what happened. And you've probably had this one too. Someone hits it way offline, but they hit it solid. And they go, "Oh, that was better." I'm like, "No, it's not. I'd rather have you mishit it straight down the fairway." But but it's interesting how a lot of what we do is we have to educate our students because, and I know you do this, but to me, the best thing I can do is help people self-diagnose so that when they go home and now they're on the range working on their game and they do slice, okay, how do I get rid of that? Or I'm hooking it too much. How do I get rid of it? I'm hitting it fat or thin. My short game isn't quite working. So I know that's a big part of what you do as well.
Yeah, I think we have to have all of our teachers created, getting a plan developed and a group of drills to do that they can do on their own. Yes, you got to give them a way that they can practice on their own. And I really like the idea of having the interplay with the student, so they're involved. I really learned that from Carl Welty, that he would oftentimes just show them something, and then he would just wait for them to come back, and they had to say, "Hey, well, did I do this or did I do that?" And he would say, "Well, what do you think?" And he just wouldn't give them the answer, more so than anybody I've ever seen. But it's kind of the Socratic method of, when somebody asks you a question, you ask them a question back instead of, being Mr. Answer All for every possible question that
Right.
the students ask you. And, I love that interplay or the interaction with students.
Yeah, Bob Toski used to do that with me all the time.
Oh,
And
yeah.
if you answered incorrectly, you got some heat from him.
Yeah. he would put Toski would put you on the spot, man.
Oh
Well,
man,
you
he's great.
reminded me. I'm going to give him a call here real soon, either tonight or tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yes, he's been an important part in so many players' lives and teachers. He's been a superstar.
Well, he did a lot of what you've done, and Claude Harmon did. He changed people's lives. He got so many teachers were influenced by him, and those teachers influenced other teachers and the players they've helped. So, Jim, it's really great. Congrats on getting elected to the Hall of Fame for the PGA of America. That was pretty neat. I saw the pictures of you from Frisco with some of your former teachers. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was special to have them. I had quite a few people come. Bill Rogers came too, so it was a nice night. But thank you very much for having me on here, Larry. It's been great talking with you. I feel like we could talk for 10 straight hours, no problem. But I really enjoyed being with you, man.
Well, it's always great to get together with you, Jim. That is Jim McLean, Hall of Fame teacher, PGA Hall of Fame member. You've been listening to the Larry Rinker Golf Podcast. Till next time, keep swinging.